to just review where we've come from. The very first session was on the life mechanism. And we said that if you choose goals that are appropriate for you, and if you choose to have a positive attitude, you will motivate yourself to act in a way in which you'll be very successful at creating a life experience that becomes satisfying. Please know you make the choice. Now, if you choose a goal that's not appropriate for you, or if you choose a negative attitude, you'll motivate yourself and you will act, but the machine now starts moving in a different direction. You'll be very successful at creating a life experience that becomes dissatisfying. So the whole point here is the spirituality that I teach is the spirituality that has been adopted by our Pope. Franciscan spirituality, and it's called responsible spirituality, because you have to pick up the responsibility for the choices you make. Now, the point, of course, is how do you know how to make choices? Well, that has to do with meditation. So the second session explained how. In meditation, you can lower your brain frequencies and you can start functioning here. So when the brain frequencies go below 14 cycles, you are in an altered state of consciousness or subconscious, or we call this the meditative state. This is where we become consciously aware of the divine presence that's with us all the time. Now, if you are in this state and you create images in your mind of the way you want to be, those images will get impressed on the brain. And when you repeat those images often enough, they go into the subconscious and you become the person you think about. So my dear friends, you cannot play around with the mind and the brain. If you fill your mind with good, healthy, wholesome, positive thoughts, those will get recorded on the brain. When they go into the meditative state, they come out in your life, and you will be a good, healthy, wholesome, positive person. If you put garbage in your thought process, guess what you're going to get out in your life? See? And the discipline is in the thought process. See, that's where the spirit world is. That's what creates your reality, your thought process. So what we did yesterday is, the last 2 days we went through the life mechanism and meditation. Now today, I want to talk to you about how you use meditation to develop positive attitudes, and that being a sign of your faith. Now, it's really difficult to talk about the spirit world because it's infinite. And language is finite. So no matter what you say about the spirit world in language is always going to be limited. Always. That's why the Second Vatican Council said that we should give away our understanding of the spirit world to all other traditions. But the Council also said that we should be aware of and open to the way the spirit world is being expressed in all these different denominations, because they can give us further insight into an infinite reality. Now, what I'm trying to do here is to find a system so that you can understand how faith and attitude works. In this model, we're saying if you fill your mind with positive thoughts, for example, about a person, then you will have a positive attitude about that person. So please note, it's your thought process that creates your attitude. So you are the only person who can create attitude. You're the only one who can change attitude. See, the opposite is also true. If you fill your mind with negative thoughts down here, then you're going to have a negative attitude. Now, our society does not really teach us to think that way. We're taught to say things like, she makes me mad. Whose fault is it? Well, hers, right? If you want to be correct in using your language, you have to say, I allow myself to be upset at who this person is or what this person has done. Please note that when I am pointing my finger, look at my hand. There are 3 fingers pointing back at me. Psychologically, that's very true. We see a fault here, but we don't want people to see it, so we point to it over there. So it becomes really important for you to understand that when Jesus told us that we have to love everybody, the only way you will understand how that works is if you understand that if you look at a person and you see the divine presence in that person, you will fall in love with that person. Now, Jesus was very specific. He said there are no exceptions. He said, do good to those who hate you. Love your enemy. And he showed us by his example how to do that. So, as Christians, we don't have a choice. Our challenge is to love absolutely everyone. Now, you know, my dear friends, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about attitudes. First of all, about self, then about others, and then about life experience. Now, the reason why I want to start with self is I don't think you can be positive with other people unless you can really understand being positive with yourself. If you look at yourself the way God does, you will find that you are a very, very important and valuable human being. There never was, nor will there ever be, another person exactly like you. That means you are unique and valuable. And you know what bothers me is that our society today is teaching young people exactly the opposite. Kids are told if you have a particular piece of clothing that has a mark on it like this, then you're going to be important. And what happens then? The kids hide that in them which is unique. See, that's a tragedy in my thought process. Imagine what it would be like if we could tell everybody, look and find in your person what is unique, and give that generously to the world in which you live. If we thought that way, nobody would be in competition with anybody. And you could support absolutely every other person because what they give is different than what you give. And we would more easily have a loving society. Now, you know, my dear friends, I learned this a long time ago when I entered the order. I was studying for some of the work that I'm doing now. And I was told that if there's someone that you can't get along with, or someone that you have a negative attitude toward, it's very easy to change that. All you do is put that person's name down on a piece of paper and then write down all the good things that you know about that person. Well, at that time, I was living with a priest who was in our community with about 20 other friars. And I really had a hard time getting along with him. So I thought, I'm going to try this out. So I went to my room and I put this guy's name down. And then I thought. And I thought. And I thought. And I couldn't find anything good to write about it. So I started a campaign. So, you know, up here in my cowl, I carry this little notebook. And I watched him. And if he so much as opened the door, I write it down. If I saw him smile, I wrote it down. If I heard anything good about him, I wrote it down. Then I went to my room at night and I started to make this list, okay? Now, I did get a long list after a long time. But what happened was that I realized at that point that we were becoming friends. And he hadn't changed at all. I did. When I started looking at all the good things that I saw in him, my attitude started to change, and he was responding, and a relationship resulted, a positive relationship. And you know, my dear friends, it was one of the most important learning experiences of my life. And I came to understand why Jesus said we must love everybody. Because there's beauty in everyone. There is divine presence in everyone. Now, what I'm going to be doing today is to give you a meditation that can show you how you can develop your self-image. And I think it's very important for you to understand you've got to deal with building self-image on a regular basis. And you know, there are little simple techniques you can use. For example, when somebody gives you an honest compliment, it's really important for you to stand on your own 2 feet and simply say, thank you. You don't have to make an excuse. You know, sometimes when I go to some of these programs and I'm out in a rural area, the priest sometimes takes the opportunity to get away from the parish for a week. And so they farm me out to houses for meals. And in this one church that I went to, which was in Illinois, one of the ladies there found out that I liked chocolate. And so we went to their house, and after a really good meal, she brought out this magnificent chocolate cake. And I said, oh, does that look beautiful? And I was salivating. And she said, oh, thank you, Father, but you know, it flopped in the middle. And I thought to myself, all the more reason why she should get compliments, because you couldn't possibly know that it fell apart in the middle because it was so beautifully camouflaged. Now, if she had a really good positive self-image, she would have simply said, thank you. And in the back of her mind, I know she would be saying, I'll make sure he gets an N piece. You get my point? And you know, those are simple things. But you know, when you accept honest compliments from people, you're accepting them for yourself and the God, the presence within you that you are expressing. Now, once you can be positive with yourself, then it's going to be a lot easier to be positive with other people. Now, I told you about this friar that I learned how to be positive with simply by making lists. But I think it's really important for you to understand when you start developing a more positive attitude, you're going to get a lot of flack from people around you, because we're living in a pretty negative environment. And when you start becoming very positive, people start getting nervous. You know, I was teaching at high school at one point, and one of the friars, who was really a negative person, came into the lunchroom with all the rest of the teachers, and he was complaining about one of these kids who did something. He was really upset. So he sat down at my table, and I told him, I said, Jeff, I said, that may be true, but I said, you know, I have one of these students who has helped me out cleaning my classroom and helping me, set up the classroom and so on. And as soon as I got finished, he gave me another story of somebody else that was doing something bad. And so I gave him another positive story. And then he gave me another negative story. And I gave him a positive story, thinking, well, if I quit, he wins. So after a while, he got really upset. And he banged his fist on the table, and he said to me, Justin, you know what your problem is? You're too positive, and don't try to make me that way. And he stormed out. You know, the irony is, and that some weeks later, he had to go to a professional psychologist to dig himself out of all that negativity, because it was affecting his entire life. You know, my dear friends, Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it to the full. And those are not empty words. And the only way that we are going to be able to experience that fullness is to be like Jesus. Jesus said, follow me. And if you want to take this information and apply it to the Christmas season, the application is very simple. Advent is when we are looking forward to the coming of Jesus. You know what? Each one of you are a divine expression of divine energy, exactly the way Saint Jesus was. And if you are a loving, compassionate, and ethical person, and you go around smiling at people, and you give honest compliments, and you wish people Merry Christmas, you are going to be the presence of Jesus in our world. That's what Advent is all about, to remind us that we have to become the person of Jesus if we want Jesus to be present in our world. Now, it's really interesting for me to note how attitude can change. I've helped prepare people for marriage. And when they're engaged, they look at each other and they see nothing wrong with anything. And if you try to tell them there's something wrong with the other person or with the relationship, they'll say, "Not my honey," because they're in love. The reason why they have that euphoric feeling is because their thought process is totally positive. Unfortunately, some of these people get married. And then the attitude starts going like this. And if it goes all the way over here, then there's a problem. I usually get the telephone call from the wife. "Father, I have a problem. I need an appointment." So she comes in and I say, "I understand you have a problem. Is it serious?" "Yes." "What is it?" "My husband." So now I have to ask her, what's the situation? So now she begins to sing the litany of all the terrible things that this man is and does. And when she gets finished, "I hate him." Well, think about that. If you don't know anything except negatives about a person, you're going to think, "I hope I never meet this guy in a dark alley." Right? Please note, where is the thought process coming from? Not the husband, from the wife. Now I have to call the husband in. If the husband is singing the same kind of litany, you know there's a war going on in the household, right? So you know what I do? I have those people do exactly the same thing that I did. I tell them, "I want you to get a little notebook, and every night you must write down at least 3 things that you found out about your spouse that are positive. You can't share, just write them down." And after 1 week, they come to me. I ask the husband first, "You tell me all the good things you know about your wife." She can do nothing else but listen. Then I tell the wife, "You tell me all the good things you know about your husband." Do you know, those people can be in my office for only 1 hour. And when they walk out of my office, they feel better about the relationship. And I have done nothing more than help them to move their thought process in a little more positive direction. That's all. Just a shift of the thought process. Now, if they keep this exercise up over a period of weeks, and they get past this point, they will start to fall in love again. Please, remember this. The way you love people is by directing your thought process in a positive direction the way Jesus did. That's the challenge. And my dear friends, we really need this globally. Our Pope is trying to help the whole world to understand we are a family. If you remember, when he was talking to the Congress, he didn't talk just to Catholic people. He was talking to the entire world. He said, "This is our home." He's talking about the planet. We have to develop that same kind of universal thought process. That's what Catholic means. It means universal. You can't exclude anybody in the loving process. And believe me, that's a challenge at this point. Now, let me say a little bit about life experience. Remember I said you don't have to accept everything I say because this is all spirituality. It depends on whether it fits into your life or not. But I believe that all life experience is good. All of it. Some is pleasant, some is not so pleasant. But it's all good. Our society wants you to believe that if you have a pleasant experience, that's good. And if you have an unpleasant experience, that's bad. That's absolutely false. The fact is that the most important and valuable experiences of your life are the ones that are difficult. Why? You look into your life to the times when you had to bump into difficulty and challenge, huh? And you have to put all kinds of effort to overcome that difficulty. When you come out on the other side, you are always a bigger and a better person with more understanding about the way life goes. Isn't that true? Go like this. And you say, yes, Father. That's what we were taught in grade school. But it's true. Do you know, one of the issues that we have in our society today is young people have been taught to run away from challenges in their life. So what's happening? You know, the age of maturity in our society today is somewhere between 14 and 40. And one of the major reasons for that is that youngsters are not coping with the difficult aspects of life, and therefore they're not growing up. When I had parents who came to me when I was teaching high school, and they were telling me, you know, they don't want their kids to go through the challenges that they had, so they're trying to make life as easy as possible. And I say, well, who took care of this responsibility or that responsibility when you were growing up? Well, we did. And I said, did you find those important and valuable in your own growth process? Of course, that's the way we grew up. I said, why do you take those opportunities away from your kids? And we really have to start thinking about that. Now, I want to say a little bit about death, only because people think that this is the ultimate tragedy, and it's not. And the church has always taught that this life is boot camp. And what we have to look forward to is passing over and getting to a full life. I mean, a really full life. Huh? The Second Vatican Council, 50 years ago, looked at how the church was celebrating death. And it wasn't a celebration, it was a dirge. If you remember, those of you who are old enough, you remember they brought the casket in, it was covered with black. The servers were dressed in black. The procession came into the church, and the server was holding the image of Jesus suffering. The choir was directed to sing in Latin. Dies irae, dies illa. You know what that means? Day of wrath and day of doom. You know, if the people could understand that stuff, they'd faint. And the fathers in the council said, this is ridiculous. We're telling people they're going to a wonderful place, and then we have this very, very negative liturgy. So we changed the liturgy. We drape the casket now in white. The procession is led into the church with the paschal candle, the sign of the risen Christ. And the choir is directed to sing, Hallelujah. Why? Well, because the person has graduated. They're in a position of full life, so why not celebrate? Now, you know, I think that it makes a big difference in your background. I come from a Polish background, and we did not have this negative attitude toward death. You know, in our Polish tradition, if you want to celebrate anything, it takes 3 days. If you want baptism, it takes 3 days. Communion takes 3 days. Confirmation, 3 days. You want to get married, it takes 3 days. If you want to die, it takes 3 days. When we were kids, they would take the body and have it embalmed, and as soon as the body left the house, the kitchen started. And they brought the body back that day, and the body was there for 3 days. And all the neighbors brought their food to that house. The kitchen was going 24 hours a day. There was a bar either in the basement or in the garage. And the Spirit was moving. And it was a big celebration, not just the family, but the whole neighborhood. And when we got to the order, it was exactly the same way. When somebody died, we had a celebration. Well, at one point, we were in Lent. And you know, we could have recreation during Lent only once a week. And that meant that we could talk for a half hour. Big deal. Well, this priest was dying, and we were taking turns being with him, so there was somebody with him all the time. And one of the young clerics said, you know, it would really be nice if George went on Thursday, because then we could get recreation. And so one of the friars, when they were talking to this priest, said, we know, Father, you're getting ready to make this wonderful journey home, and we're all praying that it's going to be easy and quick. And, you know, it would really be nice if you went on Thursday. And he did. And then we had not only recreation, but we also got a case of beer. Now, that's my background. And, you know, if you fill your mind with those kinds of thoughts, you're going to have a completely different concept about death. And the scientific community is helping us. Do any of you know the name of Raymond Moody, Dr. Raymond Moody? Yeah, he wrote a book at least 20 years ago called Life After Life, and he has since written many others. And he has interviewed people who have had near-death experience. And he's traveled all over the world. He's interviewed people of all ages, cultures, religions. They all essentially have the same experience. When they die, their astral body or the soul leaves the physical body, and they're suspended above the sea. And they said it's like being immersed in love. They have no words to explain how wonderful that experience is. Then they see a light that they know to be divine presence, and as they move toward it, they go through a tunnel and come in direct contact with this light figure, around which are friends and family that have passed on. And they talk about how wonderful those relationships and reunions are. Some of these people are told they have to come back, sometimes because they have unfinished business like raising children, or they have to make restitution for lives that were not properly lived. In any case, these people beg not to come back because that experience is so more positive than anything they have experienced here on the planet. In any case, they have to come back through that tunnel, and they are suspended above the body, and when they enter the body is reanimated. Now, you know, some of those people have been clinically dead for a half hour. The brain could never have survived. And yet, when they animate that body again, that body is whole and complete, and they go on with their lives. What is so wonderful is that all of these people lose their fear of death. And when I'm teaching this class on a weekend, I show a little clip from a movie called Changed by the Light. And it's one of Raymond Moody's stories about this young man who, when he had a near-death experience, dramatically changed his life and became a loving and compassionate, giving person. He's still alive today. And when he died, he was told, you are a powerful, spiritual being, and love makes the difference. And he's going all over the world, helping people in hospice units to die, and he's also teaching people how to understand themselves as powerful spiritual beings. Now, you know, when I was teaching in my hometown in Omaha, my mom was always in my classes, so she heard me talk about death a lot. And she also saw some of the movies that I showed of some of these stories. And a few years ago, before my dad died, I asked him if he remembered the details of my mom's death. And he said he would never forget them. So then he proceeded to tell me that my mom had gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. She came back and sat on the edge of the bed and said, Dad, I need my inhaler. She had emphysema. So my dad got up and got the inhaler and sat on the side of the bed with her. And she took the inhaler
And then she turned to my dad and said, Dad, I'm going to die now. But she said, I don't want you to call the rescue squad because I don't want anybody putting needles and tubes in me. My dad said, that's fine. And then she said, Dad, you've been an angel. Now, for 2 years before that, when I was coming home for vacation, my mom was telling us kids, your dad is an angel. Because she was not incapacitated, just very slow. And my dad was there for her all the time and very patient. That night, she said it to him. And then she kissed him and she said, Dad, I love you always. And then she lay down on the bed and she died. And they called me right away. I was in Indianapolis. So I went back home that day. And when they had the viewing of her body that night for the family, we were all shocked. They had put no makeup on her body at all. She looked 20 years younger, and she had this magnificent smile on her face. And I really believe that because my mom understood the death process, when it started to happen, she didn't fight it at all. She went right with it, and it was so fantastic that it physically changed her body. I really believe that. And you know, that's not uncommon. If you look into the lives of the saints and the holy people of all major religions who understood that process, they had the same experience. Now, you know, if you can take the time out to get some of these kinds of thoughts about death into your subconscious mind, you can be like me. I go into a funeral home and my job is to get as many people to smile and to laugh as possible, because we need to celebrate the transfer of this person from this realm to a more perfect life existence. And you know, my dear friends, if you can be positive about death, you can be positive about anything. So, what I'm going to ask is if you could please stand. We're going to do a short hymn, and then we'll get into the meditation for today.